Hey everybody, welcome back. It's a new year and it's a new episode of the Everything is a Spring podcast. Derek, how you doing, buddy?
Happy New Year, Jim. I'm doing all right. Off record, I am doing terrible and I need to go to the doctor. But on the record, I'm actually feeling pretty good, all things considered. So I'm really excited to do the podcast again, man. I did miss it.
Heck yeah, man. I am also very excited. I hope you're physically getting better, but I'm glad that you're excited to be on this podcast as well. So
it's my favorite time of the week.
We kind of did an accidental preload already. So,
I'll probably chop it out.
Okay, we'll chop it.
It was more like personal, just us talking this time. But who knows? Maybe I'll keep all these clips around for a special, like, I don't know. Maybe we'll do something cool with it all because I keep it. I archive all of it.
That's fair. Well, I was just thinking like maybe we could jump in with the Lethal Company type stuff, just because that's, I don't know, we were just talking about it. So
yeah, let's go ahead and talk about it again because long and short of it, I a few weeks ago started playing Lethal Company with some of my friends that I talk to on Discord often, and I don't get to play often just because I have like a lot of responsibilities, and I felt bad because it's only 4 slots. We ended up modding it up to I think 10 or 15. So now you can kind of just like jump in and out whenever like they're playing. And dude, I'm telling you, for a game that's $10, low poly, and just so simple, I think Lethal Company and BattleBit are great examples of it doesn't have to look like a AAA game to give you a AAA game experience, or what we all think the AAA game experience should be, right?
Yeah, so I think this is interesting quandary, like, because I think what AAA gaming has changed a lot, I think, in the past, I don't know, decade or so. Because I feel like AAA gaming used to be all about like the single player like story mode, right?
Right.
I think back to, and there was like, obviously there was campaign, like co-op campaign, and that was awesome. I'm a huge
Halo.
proponent. I'm thinking about Halo, I'm thinking about Modern Warfare 2.
Yeah.
Like, to me, like the co-op like split screen was like such a foundational part of so many of these games, at least for me, because I also didn't actually own the console. Like, I had to go to a friend's house to play. I would just visit, and we'd have to like jump on and play. So like, that's when I got to play video games, was hanging out with buddies, which I think is a better experience anyway, but
True.
Irrelevant. Nowadays, I think we've seen the AAA space shift their focus way more into like the competitive multiplayer. Because like you look at like Call of Duty nowadays, and even at like Halo Infinite and stuff like this, really like, and I will say like I actually did enjoy the Halo Infinite campaign. I thought it was pretty good, but most of, I would say, like AAA games nowadays are really focused on like multiplayer and like loot boxes and this kind of garbage.
That's true. It is concurrent users nowadays. It's like the benchmark of success rather than just raw sales, right?
Exactly. And I guess that's because you can generate ongoing revenue if you have that large player base that's like coming back to the game over and
sell
over.
them some, like you said, sell them loot boxes, sell them some
skins,
customization.
Whatever it is.
Yeah,
exactly.
People buy it. Like, people spend
Absolutely.
thousands of dollars on like League and Overwatch,
like battle passes,
exactly,
Fortnite and all this.
Think about it, a monthly fee for a free game is really what that battle pass is.
It is.
Yeah,
it is. It's kind of wild, but anyway. But one of the things I think that shift in the AAA gaming industry has really given a lot of power to these indie game developers, because you're not actually really required to have this huge elaborate story and hours and hours and hours of content, because in order to compete with Fortnite, all you have to do is have a fun game with a fun basic gameplay loop and a premise and online capabilities, so you can host 4 people.
Like, and I can hit the gritty on someone when I kill them and call it a day. But Jim,
exactly.
to piggyback off your point there, I think where AAA gaming went wrong back in the day, right? If you bought a game, that was just how the game was. There was no patching, right? Sometimes I remember there was a brief period where like you could ask PlayStation or the developer to send you a DLC disc where it would actually update the game for you. It was a different disc you had to actually put in after and install some stuff onto your memory card. besides that, the game had to be complete and ready before you sold it. Now we have all these, it's an alpha, it's a pre-alpha, but you're paying for it. You know, I'm all for a free beta. If you have a free beta, perfect, get your data. But when you make people pay for that game, especially if you're marketing towards adults who have jobs and need to work, I don't have the energy now at 25 even to sit down with a game that's incomplete when I could go play Cyberpunk, which is ironic. I'm using that example, but it's complete now, right? Like something that I can jump on. It works for 2 hours that I have to play, and then I can, get on with my life.
Yeah, I'm right there with you because like again, like we both have so many responsibilities. And so like my time to play video games is, I can't imagine like how I played so much video games in college. Like that life is so completely alien to me now. I just can't even remember how it happened.
So you felt so busy, but it's like, I'm really only just putting off my own studying. Like I didn't have much else going on besides working that.
So it's interesting, but yeah, I definitely agree with you. Like I think there's a lot more value to me now as a consumer of video game content with a game that I can put down and pick up really easily.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like, so one of the things too, like I've been playing through Baldur's Gate and, that's a huge game, but one of the things I really like about it is that, I can put it down. You can actually save at any point in time.
Yep. Just
even
F5 at any time.
Cutscenes, F5 at any time, and put it down and go do something else.
Right. So like if life comes a knocking, you're not being punished. Like for example, if you were playing Modern Warfare, like nowadays, so like you're playing Warzone or Overwatch, you're letting your team down, blah, 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 if they care that much. But, I can just hop away instead of having to feel like I need to compete. And it's more relaxing. Like I love that you're playing Baldur's Gate. I did not expect that to be something in your wheelhouse, like the RPG style.
I'm a huge nerd, Derek.
Dude, maybe that will be like, if we get to our, we have a new year today, right? Or like this episode, but we haven't actually been doing the podcast for a year. Maybe that could be one of the ideas we add to our big list of ideas. Like we do a Baldur's Gate stream.
We start streaming.
But like, not subscribers only, but like we only give the link to our like fans, folks that actually
That'd be funny.
That'd be good.
That'd be pretty cool. I don't know. Like, so I think I've not played Starfield, but I think that might be more in line with our general content of like, okay, where it's kind of like vaguely engineering-ish, where because it's space. I don't know.
You know what we should do? I think what would be a perfect stream if we were to do like a year special would be like Satisfactory.
I don't even know what that is.
All right. Imagine you've heard of Factorio.
I have heard of it, but I'm not familiar again.
All right, so long and short of it, right? Let me give you the pitch, the sales pitch on Satisfactory. You're making a factory, right? And it's a 3D, like, FPS style game. There's a huge alien world you get landed on. And the long and short of it is you're trying to gain materials to build infrastructure and send the materials back home through a space elevator. And that's kind of how you progress through the game. Long and short of it is I have played it for hundreds of hours and it is highly addictive and I feel like you would love it because it's just like optimization simulator.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. It looks cool.
And also like
pretty cool.
Audience, if there is we are not coming up on a year anytime soon, so y'all have like 6-8 months. If you want, like, tell us what you would want to see at our year anniversary of Everything's a Spring, because I have a lot of ideas, but we'd like to hear what you got to say too.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm just looking through the Satisfactory thing.
It's a rabbit hole, cool. Jim. It's like
that
Minecraft,
is a whole rabbit hole.
Except imagine modded Minecraft, except that's the game.
Yeah, I mean, it looks pretty cool. I could definitely lose some hours into that, but
and it's nice and multiplayer. And it's one of those games like you can just put it down whenever you want. Like I have a couple of worlds with my old roommate Nick. And, we haven't played it in 3 or 4 months, but every now and then we both get the itch to play at the same time. We'll just load up our old world and get back to work.
Absolutely.
Clock back in.
Just clock back in. I think that's like one of the reasons like Minecraft is like so successful.
Yeah, you can drop it for years and you still know how to play it. You can still come back. Some things change,
come back and jump back in. So.
Well, Jim.
Yeah.
We've talked about video games. We've talked about the new year. You know what we haven't talked about yet?
Anything engineering related.
Not really.
Well, Derek, I have got a solution to that.
What you got, Jim?
So, Derek, how much do you? Well, this is going to be kind of a tone shift.
Hit me
How
with
much do you know? What do you know about a little chemical called methyl isocyanate?
Well, let me tell you with absolute honesty, Jim. It popped into my head because I know how to make chemical formulas because that's something they teach you in Gen Chem. I have no idea what it does. And I have no familiar. Does it have a common name maybe, or is that just the good stuff?
Well, okay, so methyl isocyanate is actually kind of like an intermediary process step. So it's used in the manufacture of basically like pesticides, right?
Oh, it's a killer. That's where
it's a killer.
That's where that CN comes from, huh?
Yep, that's cyanide. So basically, I'll tell you a little bit about it because it's going to be very germane to our discussion today. So maybe it's easier to preface the discussion with it.
I'm so excited.
So, do you know what methylamine is?
I've heard of it, yeah.
So methylamine, as featured in the hit show Breaking Bad, is it's an organic compound. It's basically it's CH3NH2, so it's a hydrocarbon basically, but it's also like a methanol, right? So it's famously used in a lot of different industries, but famously in the production of methamphetamines.
Jesse, we need to cook.
We need to cook. We still have a barrel. Oh my gosh. I really feel like I should watch Breaking Bad at some point.
Wait, well, hold up now. You ain't never seen it? Oh, yeah.
No, I've not.
Go ahead and do that. Do yourself a favor. Watch Breaking Bad all the way through, then watch Better Call Saul, because they're both award-winning shows, and rightfully so. I think you'd like them both.
Yeah, I'll have to pick it up. But back to the goods at hand, as it were. The goods. Methyl iso. We're not going to talk too much about methylamine because it's not really relevant.
FDA, for the record, I am not making any chemicals. Please do not arrest me. Thank you.
Yeah, no need to search our houses.
I am so careful with what I look up on my personal computer because, at work, I often have to look up some very volatile chemicals just because that's part of the job. I have to be very careful I don't, for legal reasons, accidentally look up. So it's like, he looked up 4 things that are made to make nitrate-based bombs, and what's he up to over there?
What's this guy up
knock,
to?
knock, open up the door. It's the FBI. I ain't doing nothing but making podcasts, bro.
Knock, knock. It's the ATF.
Oh, no. Don't shoot my dog. I don't even have one.
They'd find one.
They bring one for you.
It's like you know how like there'll be the whatever, like the cops will plant the little baggie.
Yeah, they'll plant some. Yeah,
they'll plant the dog. They'll like put a dog in your house. You'll come home and be like, "Where'd this dog come from?" And then the ATF will knock on your door.
Kick the door. They don't
shoot
knock.
The dog.
It's a no-knock door. They kick that bad
true.
boy down, shoot the dog for emotional distress for you.
Exactly.
PETA is silent about this matter somehow. I digress.
Anyway, yeah, well, it's all for the emotional trauma because you're like, where did this dog come from?
Oh my god!
And then as soon as you ask that, bah, 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 and then there's no more dog.
Oh, rip
anyway,
hypothetical dog.
That's how the ATF works, ladies and gentlemen.
That's an engineer. Hey, you know what else is a spring? The several 3-letter agencies of the United States.
But anyway, so methyl isocyanate is basically formed by reacting methylamine and phosgene. And then you do a couple more steps and you use it to make pesticides, specifically, in this instance, carbaryl. Which is just a specific pesticide. It's generally, like the brand name is called Sevin, Sevin.
Oh, that's very cryptic.
It is. It's like again, like we were talking a little bit earlier about how Lethal Company just like tickles my like evil corporation itch.
Ooh.
And like this episode has also tickled my evil corporation itch in just the right way, but maybe not. It's very unclear. So anyway, Sevin or carbaryl is manufactured or was manufactured in the 80s by Union Carbide. Which was a company that was basically producing it commercially since the 50s, late 50s. And then they got purchased by who do you imagine may have purchased this company?
Jim, I'm just going to go ahead and guess Monsanto Industries. That's
Actually,
my
I
guess.
don't think so.
Or that or DuPont.
You're close.
Ooh.
It is now owned by the Dow Chemical Company, which is
damn.
another one of these big chemical companies that control all of our lives.
I was thinking, like, what evil corporations like chemicals? I forgot about good old-fashioned Dow.
DuPont is a good one. That was a really good option. But it is actually Dow, the Dow Chemical Company. So
Dow.
Yes. But anyway, so they were purchased in like the early 2000s by Dow. But where our catastrophe brings us to today is in India in December of 1984.
1984 India.
In a small town, well, not a small town, but a town in India, which a small town in India would be a large town here generally.
One of the towns.
It's in a town in India called Bhopal. Bhopal. And in Bhopal, the basically the Indian section of the Union Carbide, called the Union Carbide India Limited Company, operated a pesticide plant in that small town. And on December 1984, they released 42 tons of methyl isocyanate into the atmosphere, which the wind carried into the town of Bhopal, affecting more than 500,000 people.
Oh, so no foreplay, nothing, just right into the war crimes, like the crimes against humanity. Holy, you said how many tons?
42 tons of methyl isocyanate.
Now,
and that's not as
viewer.
Much. Yeah, for the viewer, like that's a lot, but like that's not as much as we've talked about in some of our other episodes.
But we're talking about a gas, are we not?
We are talking
like
about
when you
gas.
think about a ton of gas, that is even compressed. That is a huge amount. Like it's not like we're not talking about molasses here. I can visualize a ton of molasses.
Right. Like a ton of molasses is probably about the size of a car, right? Like you'd imagine.
You know?
But like a ton of gas
compressed
is
gas.
Huge still. Yeah. And one of the reasons that we're only talking about 42 tons, but it's still such a huge issue, is that methyl isocyanate is really dangerous. It's extremely toxic.
Pesticide kills things? More at 5.
Exactly. It's extremely toxic. So the limit set by the American Conference of Government Agents, which is kind of like who makes like, you know, how many parts per million you can be exposed to safely.
Yeah.
Your general exposure should be no more than 0.02 parts per million.
Okay. Put it in perspective for me.
So you will start experiencing symptoms as low as 0.4 parts per million, right? Generally, you can't detect the smell of something. Humans can't detect the smell of something until 5 parts per million.
Oh. So by the time you even notice, you already had it.
You're already experiencing things. Well, so one of the good things about methyl isocyanate is it'll make you cry. It'll activate your tear ducts. It's extremely irritating to the eyes.
Okay.
And so one of the ways that you can tell you're getting methyl isocyanate poisoning is that you're beginning to cry for no apparent reason.
Well, Jim, you know how difficult that is? Like, am I just bawling my eyes out, or am I being poisoned by methyl isocyanine or whatever? Like,
that's true.
That's a tough symptom.
It is. Well, presumably, like, if you're working in a plant that has methyl isocyanate, you would be like, I'm probably experiencing.
Well, Bubba, what's going on over there? Did Jane break up with you again? I don't know, man.
It's that or the chemicals.
It's always the chemicals. Why am I crying now? There's no OSHA in India.
No, there's not. Especially not in 1984. And that's like one of the things we're going to talk about here in a little bit is the one of the benefits, right, of being in the United States is that we, and there's been a lot of back and forth of this over the decades, but generally we've regulated our industries.
Generally,
so there's a lot of hoops that you need to jump through. Like if you were going to create methyl isocyanate in the United States, I mean, it would be a lot. You would have to jump through a lot of safety hoops. You would be highly regulated.
Allegedly.
In India, yeah, allegedly. In India in 1984,
get it done. Get the job done.
Just get it done. Yeah, exactly. And we'll talk about all of that here in a little bit. But to go back to the isocyanate, high levels of exposure, it only takes like 21 parts per million to cause basically death.
Whoa.
Right.
All right. So you're like, just to give the threshold, small amounts, you're not supposed to have like in the decimals, like 0.4. You start noticing it at 4 with the tear ducts. And then you're telling me a lethal dose is like in the 20s parts per million?
Yeah. 20-ish, 21 plus parts per million.
All right, let's play the Wheel of Fortune game of how many parts per million did this, I assume, slum in India get?
Oh, a lot. So
several.
I'm trying to find. Give me 1 second because I want to find like chart.
And for our viewers, while you're looking for that, just to understand the culture difference, right? I'm not saying I'm an India expert by any metric, but you have to think this is the same government that to this day, in the richest city in India, Mumbai, has some of the worst slums adjacent. And it's just this, you can look at images online. I don't know how much we can show here, but it is a visual, like if you look on a satellite image, it's a noticeable barricade of wealth distribution. And for our viewer, like just my opinion here, this is not on accident. This is a design. The same way that you can look at a ghetto or gentrification in any part of a major city in the United States, Mumbai's slums has been a story for the people of Mumbai and the workers of Mumbai for, at least 2-3 generations, if not more. I don't know how far back it goes, only modern history. But yeah, if you're not angry at your government,
maybe think about it.
I apply you to reconsider,
I like that. I would consider it. I would strongly consider it.
Just saying, not saying you have to go out and squeak about it. Just give it some thought. Maybe.
Okay, so I'm trying to figure out. I want to find some kind of baseline so people kind of understand what is 20 parts per million.
Okay. Conversion time. I guess a part per million is a tough unit of measurement to visualize because we don't usually work in millions in our day-to-day life.
Yeah, part of that is even to visualize a million of something is actually really hard for the human brain.
Right.
I really think once you get over a few thousand of something, it just becomes
I have
very
no frame of
abstracted.
reference.
Yeah, it's what is that?
You've seen billions of blades of grass, right? But you don't know that. You can't calculate.
But you haven't really counted them. Yeah,
exactly.
you haven't really counted them.
So in this context, when we're talking about the parts part of the parts per million, I know that was way too many times to say part. We're talking about molecules, right?
Yeah, basically the airborne molecule of the chemical. And so it depends on so basically I'm now looking at this. It depends on what it is that you're smelling. Mm-hmm. But ozone, you can smell ozone as low as 0.01 parts per million.
Right. And you might experience that right before a rainstorm.
Exactly, like a thunderstorm. So basically what they're saying is methyl isocyanate, first of all, is odorless. So you really can't smell it very well. But basically it's the same intensity as 2 thunderstorms is the maximum amount of normal levels that you should be tolerating. Right?
Oops, all poison.
Whoops, exactly. So I don't know if there's any air quality data from this particular event because...
Jim, I would probably guess if there is...
It was the 80s.
It's probably swept under a rug.
Yeah, okay, so this is really interesting. Let's go ahead and just jump into the thing itself. So before we get into the details... I'm going to be kind of bashing the corporation because I enjoy bashing corporations.
No.
But there's actually a deeper thing, right? So this is kind of maybe like a choose your own adventure type thing. And I'll bash on both parties.
Okay.
So which would you trust less, your government or your corporation?
Now, my knee-jerk reaction these are the same picture, right? Because, like, who's pulling the strings of the corporation? I mean, but
Right,
I
okay,
would say probably the company. It's as hard as that is. I would say the company because it is the government's responsibility to regulate things. I can only speak on the United States' experience. I have no idea about India's work culture in that regard.
Yeah.
I would say I would trust the company less.
That's fair. And that's a valid standpoint. In this case, I'm very split. So let's go ahead and jump into it, and we'll kind of get there when we get there. So so this is the Union Carbide India Limited, UCIL. This factory was built in Bhopal in 1969 to produce the pesticide 7.
Nice.
Using methyl isocyanate, which was referred to very broadly within that community as MIC, right? So you're just acronyming it.
That is terrifying.
It's good. As an intermediate, basically processing step. So you combine the raw materials to make the methyl isocyanate, and then you react it with another agent to actually make the 7. It's important to know that you can actually make 7 without using MIC, but it's more expensive.
Oh, Jim, come on now. Like, we know, or a little fun aside about reaction pathways, that's one of the first things they teach you in organic chemistry, because as you start doing like Orgo 1 and 2, yes, they will be like, yeah, there's 4 or 5 different mechanisms that you can use to get to this final product. But as you start getting into the higher level chemistry, one of the things that they start preparing you for is, hey, absolutely, you could do this reaction in, let's just make it simple, 10 minutes with this reactant, and it's only one reactant. However, that reactant costs $4,000 per gram. You're never going to get any of it in a research space. So yeah, that's a huge part of, I don't know if you know what isomers are when they were talking about like baby aspirin in the early United States times, but there are 2 different types of every chemical depending on the mirror image of it. The long and short of it is, in some situations, one is deadly, one is very useful for babies. The problem is, it is really expensive to make sure that you filter out all of the deadly bit. So you're actually seeing kind of, because it's the same generation, keep that in mind as Jim talks about the next part.
Okay. So it's important to note also that this particular plant had a history of problems.
Oh. No. Surely not.
Yeah. Oh, indeed. So in 1976, there's 2 of these like local trade. There's unions. Like there's actual like labor unions.
That's unexpected.
Exactly. But they are there, and they are complaining of like, hey, like this area is really polluted and we should do something about it.
Yeah.
And so this was raised as an issue. Like, hey, there's pollutants getting out into the facility. That was an issue that was raised. And then in 1981, a worker was accidentally splashed with phosphogene while he was carrying out maintenance in the pipes of the chemical plant. And in a panic, he removed his gas mask and he died. He died as a result of the inhalation.
Oh, that's a terrible knee-jerk reaction to have inside of a pipe.
It is awful. I don't think he was in a pipe, but he was around like all these chemical fumes. And
holy, he just ripped his gas mask off?
Well, yeah. So what I assume happened is like it splashed all over his face.
Yeah.
And body. And then he was just like, well, your first instinct.
Panic, yeah.
And this is like, yeah, you panic. And then, like, get this off of me. And this, what I want to bring up with this is that, and this will be brought up later, I don't believe that the workers received enough training to deal with emergencies.
You know what? I wouldn't be surprised. And also, they probably weren't told the full extent of what the materials how dangerous the materials they're using. Because think about it. If the workers aren't scared of it, they're going to handle it however they want. And you're not going to know until you have cancer when you retire.
Or the other thing that it could be is that they were told, hey, this stuff's really dangerous, but they weren't told how to properly handle it.
Oh,
because the correct way to handle this in this instance, right? Because he was splashed with phosgene,
right,
is leave your gas mask on.
Leave your gas mask on, get into an emergency shower, and then let someone
get out
process
of there
it.
and exactly. Right. And so like to me this is like already a huge red flag.
It's a very simple step, but like think about it. These aren't, I'm assuming they're not unskilled workers by any metric, but this is a very specific SOP to deal with. You would have to, and over here, you'd have to know the MSDS, and there's very specific instructions on handling, and it's like, oh, if it gets to this temperature, it's going to become, this is the boiling point, it's going to become a gas. This is how you deal with the gas. Oh, for the audio listeners, Jim's hitting me with the double finger guns. I think I found a clue.
Oh, we're getting there. We're getting there. But after this plant worker's death, there was actually a local journalist who investigated and published his findings in a local paper. And this is the quote: "Wake up, people of Bhopal. You are on the edge of a volcano." End quote.
Whoa.
Yeah. Oh, like those are big words.
That's the scary words. Wake up.
Indeed.
You are at the edge of a volcano.
Yeah. And
wow.
Unfortunately, we're talking about him because he was eventually proved correct. So in 1982, there's another phosgene leak that exposes 24 workers, all of whom were admitted to the hospital. Okay. And guess what? None of these workers were told to do.
I don't know. What were they not told?
We've talked about this before, but none of them were told to wear protective equipment.
Wait, at all?
At all.
Like, oh, so this was less of the first example of the guy had protective equipment on, got splashed, handled it incorrectly. They weren't even told to.
Nope.
That was not all right for our viewer and for Jim. These governments don't care about you. These companies don't care about you. That was not an accident. It was not an accident that they weren't told. It was, how do you get cheap labor? You get folks that are desperate for work. You don't tell them you don't tell them how dangerous the job is. And because usually they're fishing out of a lesser educated pond of employees, they're not going to ask questions. They're not going to find out until something like this happens.
And in the 80s, how would you? Like,
unless you're a chemist.
In India in the 80s, as an average person walking onto the job site, how on earth would you look up the dangers of phosgene?
No way. It is literally impossible without the education to know, hey, this is, like, think about it. Do you think, I have a question just as a hypothetical. Do you think they took the warning labels off? They usually source chemicals from a manufacturer. Manufacturers often put warning labels, safe handling information. You get a copy of the MSDS with the order. Do you think they took it off or no one read it?
I just think nobody read it. Like,
not their problem.
Like part of this too is like never chalk up to malice what can be accomplished through like negligence and stupidity.
That's fair. And no offense to the workers, it's not their responsibility to know. It's the employer's responsibility to let the employee know.
Yes.
Oh, I'm getting hot over here, Jim. I'm feeling angry.
Oh yeah. We should note that phosgene is actually less deadly than MIC, but it's still really bad for you.
Your stage 3 cancer is not stage 1 cancer. Like, bad is bad. Like, these are employees; they should be protected. You know what I mean?
Yes, I agree with you, but I just want to
for reference.
We should note, for reference,
MIC is way worse.
MIC is way worse. Phosgene, you can inhale doses up to 150 parts per million per minute before you really start seeing very immediate problems.
So that's more of a long-term exposure problem, the phosgene.
Correct. And they kill you they kill you in very different ways, which is great. But we won't get into that. So anyway,
this is what they meant when they said pick your poison.
Yes. Yeah, it's actually, so a lot of these sayings pick your poison or whatever. A lot of these types of sayings actually come really dark industrial era stuff.
Yep.
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 We should do an episode on like what
Can we
like
do a hazard
weird
sign episode in the history of where they
Oh,
came from?
that'd be cool. That and like popular sayings that actually come from like engineering or chemical like
That would be
factories and stuff
sick.
like that. That'd be kind of
Let's
cool.
definitely do that because I would love to know like things you say every day that There's some fun
That
ones.
might be
like,
kind of a fun little like a preload.
yeah. I think "Oops, all preload" is something that the people are going to want at some point.
Just our title of our episode. Whoops, all preload. That's funny.
That is not, for reference, that is not an original idea. There's a podcast called Well, There's Your Problem that does something similar to what we do. They have a news section at the beginning, which I guess is our preload, kind of. And they did a Oops All News, and as a viewer, I really enjoyed it, even though they didn't talk engineering.
I like it. All right, so getting back to their really terrible track record in the 80s. In 1982, there was the phosgene leak, and then a month later, in February of 1982, there's an MIC leak that affects 18 workers.
Oh.
And then in August of 1982, there's another chemical engineer who comes into contact with liquid MIC, and that causes 30% of his body to be chemically burned.
Whoa, dude.
Then, it doesn't stop there. In October of that same year, there's another MIC leak, and during the stopping of that leak, the supervisor and 2 other workers are severely exposed and burned by the chemical.
All right, let's just give up on chemicals in 1982. It's not your year, company. It's
not
take a hiatus.
But that doesn't get better. So in 1983 and 84, leading up to this large leak that we're going to talk about, there are smaller leaks of MIC, chlorine, methylamine, phosgene, and carbon tetrachlorate, sometimes all at once.
So you're telling me that there is an established history of, I would say, how do I put this kindly? Raw negligence?
Yes. Oh boy,
raw
are we going to get
unadulterated
into the negligence?
Are
we going to get into the negligence? Oh gosh. Okay, so basically there is a couple different... Should we talk about like what actually happens that day, or do you want to talk about potential causes first?
Let's start with what happened. Let's go with the events step by step. Let's break it down.
So let's break it down. So basically it is December, 4th, I believe? December 2nd. It's the night of December 2nd into the early morning of December 3rd.
You're excited for Christmas.
1984. They're going to get a great Christmas. A white Christmas with chemical light. Just...
Yeah,
whatever.
white phosphorus Christmas.
White phosphorus Christmas. So, let's get into it. The Bhopal facility houses basically 3 underground storage tanks, and they're for storing liquid MIC. And they are called tanks E610, E611, and E619.
Wait, what? Why did they skip? No, never mind.
I think because they had more of these tanks, but not all of them were used for MIC. So
Gotcha.
We're just talking about the MIC tanks today. So the Union Carbide safety regulations specify that no tank can ever be filled more than 50%, which is 30 tons of liquid MIC.
That's a lot.
That's a lot
Half
of tons
capacity?
of liquid MIC. Yes. And this is because it's a pressurized gas. The way that you extract the MIC is by you pressurize it with nitrogen, right? So basically what you're doing is you are taking nitrogen and you're pumping it into the tank to create a positive pressure. Mm-hmm. And then you can just basically like crack a ball valve. And if you have a hose that goes down into the liquid, it'll come out, right? And so It's a very convenient way of getting the MIC out of the tank because you don't need any pumps. You don't have to have... And because MIC is also like very corrosive, this is a very nasty chemical. Because it's a very corrosive substance, if you have pumps and things like this, it will eat away at the pumps very quickly. So using a gas pump, like having a pressurized gas on top of the fluid, is a really great way of processing that material. and enabling you to pump it around without actually having a physical pump that will then be exposed to the chemical and break down and potentially cause leaks.
And this is really common practice in
very
industrial chemistry, especially when you're talking gases and liquid phases.
Yeah, so this is actually, I guess as a broader topic, you would call this gas over liquid handling. So for one example of this is you talk about like air over hydraulic, right? True. So, in a lot of like hoists and lifts and stuff like this where you have hydraulic pressure, you want the actual lifting to be done by hydraulic ram because it's non-compressible.
Right.
But if you have, basically, it's not that it's always hard to, but it's relatively expensive to have like a hydraulic pump to create that pressure, and it can be really hard on the pumps too. So what you can do is you can basically have a reservoir which has hydraulic oil in it, and then you can apply a gas, and usually we just use compressed air to put 120 psi into that reservoir, and then that will then force the hydraulics into the hydraulic cylinder and lift it. And then you can release the pressure, and then you can let it down slowly because you're using the hydraulics as the actual motive fluid.
Oh, so the air just acts like as a buffer. That can
Not exactly.
Okay, help me understand.
The air acts to create the force to drive the fluid. Does that make sense?
I gotcha. So these aren't mixing. It's just a push.
Yes.
Situation.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but you don't have to have like an intermediary plate, right?
You can just go straight to the liquid.
It's air and gas. You have a single tank with hydraulic fluid like halfway filled. And then if you pressurize that with, say, 120 psi of air pressure, you're going to be pushing down on that water or that hydraulic oil with
going into
120 psi, which can be, if you have a large tank, you can have an enormous amount of actual pressure onto that hydraulic fluid. So then you can lift lots of very heavy things, but you're lifting it with hydraulic oil, right? And that's important because the hydraulic oil is non-compressible, which means it will not act as a spring. And so, like, if you're something that's not a spring. But if you're lifting, like, let's say a car overhead to work on it, you do not want that to be springing around.
Right. Right. Of course.
So that's where the hydraulic oil, the hydraulic fluid comes in really, really handy. And then the air is really just a way to access that hydraulic fluid.
You're just moving it around.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Exactly.
That's good to know. I guess a biological example of this, when I worked in the refrigerant factory, you've heard of gas cylinders, right? They often have several different phases of gas, right? Each gas denser than the other, and they kind of separate themselves out by density. So if you ever go past a, gas manufacturing plant and you see what looks like steam being vented out, it's not always steam. Often it's deadly chlorofluorocarbons or hydrochlorofluorocarbons or some variant of whatever they're using in the refrigerants nowadays, and just being vented legally, as the EPA has standards that you can vent X amount of gallons of that. So look around next time you pass your local air gas or equivalent.
Man. And some of it can be also. Anyway, we'll get we're getting off. We're on a tangent.
Let's get back to the circle.
But anyway, in late October of 1964, the
84?
tank E84. 1984. Did I say something else?
I thought you said 64. I might have misheard you.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So in late October of 1984, tank E610 lost the ability to effectively contain most of its nitrogen gas pressure.
It's a long way to say it leaked. That's a lot of words to just say this bitch cracked.
Exactly. Which means that the liquid MIC contained within it could not be pumped out. At that time, tank 610 had 42 tons of liquid MIC. Now, Derek, I know we said this like a few minutes ago because we went off on a wild tangent. How many tons of liquid MIC are these tanks supposed to hold?
Half of the total capacity, right?
Which is 30 tons.
So So we're starting off great.
This is a good start.
This is a good start. We're overloading the tanks based on what the manufacturer told us to do, and we have more in it already. Go on.
Yep. Well, so they actually, let's recognize this accomplishment.
Okay.
At the time of the failure, they were like, "Hey, we should shut down the production of MIC so we can fix it."
Yeah, that's pretty good. This is a pretty smart idea. Just stop making more so you can put it somewhere else. Maybe put it in a barrel or something. Sure.
Exactly. So parts of the plant are shut down for maintenance, which includes the flare tower. Do you know what the flare tower is?
No, I have no idea what the flare tower is, but I am excited to find out.
So a flare tower is basically, have you ever driven by I guess it would be like an industrial park, and you'll just see like a tower. It's just like a tube, and then like the top of it is on fire.
Oh, that's what a flare tower is?
That's
do
a
know
flare
what
tower.
a flare tower is then. I didn't know that's what that was called. You see them on like oil rigs sometimes.
Yes, you do. And what they're for is to burn off the flammable gases, particularly in oil. And
in a controlled way. Because last thing you want to do is your building get filled with this flammable gas. There's a spark, the whole bad boy lights up. You burn it on purpose, vent it all to a specific point. You have a visual indicator of your flammable gas escaping, which is good.
And also, as you burn it, it actually changes, right? It's a chemical reaction, right? So you're actually changing, for example, in the case of like methane, which is natural gas, it basically turns into water and carbon dioxide.
A dang old exothermic reaction.
Yes. And importantly, water and carbon dioxide are significantly better for the environment than methane that's unburned.
So I've been told. I think Al Gore told me that a long time ago or something. I can't remember.
That's fair. The same is actually true of MIC, right? Because if you actually burn MIC, it breaks apart the chemicals, and it basically, because you have H3C, and then you've got a nitrogen and a couple of carbon atoms and an oxygen atom. So it breaks it apart into basically water and carbon dioxide. So the flare tower was taken out of commission during the maintenance.
Oh, they turned it off?
They turned it off. And the reason they turned it off is that there was a corroded pipe that needed to be repaired within it.
Oh, you mean corrosive material was corrosive? Crazy.
Oh, yes.
Who would have seen this?
With the flare tower rendered still useless, production of carburel was resumed in late November, using MIC stored in the two tanks still in service.
Hold up. Park it. Park it. You mean to tell me they stopped production, turned the flare tower off, and we're just like, we're not forgetting anything. Just start that bad boy back up. Go on. All right, I'm following you. It's right down the rabbit hole.
So they attempt to reestablish pressure in tank E610 on December the 1st, and they can't do it. And so they still can't pump out the MIC contained within it. By early December of 1984, most of the MIC's safety systems were malfunctioning, and many of the valves and lines were in bad condition, and several gas scrubbers that clean the exhaust were out of service, and also a steam boiler that was used to clean the pipes was also out of service.
Wait, is this an Indian chemical plant, or is this a Russian warship? What is happening? Nothing works.
Nothing works. Yeah, basically everything is broken. And the tank still contains 42 tons of MIC.
You just listed so many problems.
One of the things that I should have said earlier about MIC is that it reacts extraordinarily violently with a lot of things. One of those things, Derek, is water.
Oh, really?
Yes. So MIC reacts extremely readily with water in a very exothermic way.
Oh, you know what that means, viewer? Hot, hot, hot.
Hot, hot, hot. And you know what hot, hot, hot means in a pressurized vessel?
Boom, boom, boom.
Yes. Explode. So basically, in the late evening of December 2nd, they were trying to clean the pipes to get it to operate again. And they were cleaning the pipes with water.
Oh, as you do, yeah.
As you do. And this is where we'll get into the split. There's two different there's two different ways that basically there's the Union Carbide has one version of how this happened, and the Indian government has another version of how this happened.
Ooh, exciting.
But basically what happens is water manages to get into tank E610.
Oh.
And enough water gets into 610 that it basically creates a runaway exothermic reaction, which is accelerated by contaminants, not only in the water, but also in the tank itself, because they have corroded piping. So iron is in this as well. So there's all kinds of just garbage in the tank that is now starting to react.
They're just, oh, go on. I'm sorry. I gotta shut up. I'm getting upset. I feel it.
So this is even better. You're going to be so mad. So the normal tank pressure is 2 psi. That's the normal tank pressure.
Okay. That's not a lot.
That's not a lot. Yeah, well, this is also like PSIG, right? So that's basically like
gram.
the gauge pressures. So you're going to have, well, no. So PSIG is referred to as gauge pressure. And so that's like what the gauge itself reads.
That's not the actual pressure in the
correct.
tank.
Kind of. Okay, so basically the premise is that atmospheric pressure is about 14 psi, but because you have atmospheric pressure potentially on both sides of the gauge, you would actually read 0, because the gauge doesn't actually read the psi unless you design it to do that. It reads the pressure difference between the inside and the outside of a tank. Does that make sense?
That makes sense, yeah.
So basically, what you would do is you would keep a small, like, continuous stream of nitrogen into the tank to avoid having any leaks, right? So you'd want like a small positive pressure inside the tank. So the normal PSI is 2 PSI. And that is at 10:30 p.m., that is what the pressure is.
Perfect.
By 11 p.m., the tank has reached 10 PSI.
A 5 times difference in 30 minutes.
Which doesn't sound like a lot of pressure. And I think this is part of it, of like, oh, well, 10 PSI isn't that much. It's not even an atmosphere of pressure, right? Like, okay, what's the problem? Yeah, like, what's the big deal? 2 different senior refinery employees assumed the reading was instrumentation malfunction.
I'm sorry, go back a couple. You said assumed?
Yes.
Interesting.
And I think like this comes from basically the plant is in such horrible repair that like they can't even trust their instrumentation. That
is a dangerous loop. Like that is a feedback loop just leading to one destination. It is disaster. You can't trust the pressure gauge. Oh, you can't trust the air filtering system. Oh, the flare tower doesn't work. There's so many points of failure. You get kind of detached from any.
You do, yes. And yeah, so it's just like, well, everything's broken. So why bother? Like, what's one more? Exactly, right? So by 11:30 p.m., people who were working, like workers in the MIC area, were starting to feel the effects of minor exposure to the gas. And they began to look for a leak, and they found it at 11:45.
Okay, so this is what, 45, a little after an hour, a little over an hour?
We're about 2 hours and 15 minutes into this thing.
Gotcha.
From the nominal pressure reading at 10:30 p.m.
Okay.
So they find the leak. They find the leak, and they report it to the supervisor on shift.
Perfect. They did their job. Good job.
All right. What do you think that they did, right? Like picture this. Like, let's set the scene.
All right.
You know, like you are the supervisor on time. Let's say I'm the guy who comes in and is like, Mr. Cotton, we've found a leak in the MIC tank.
Get back to work.
Kind of. What basically they said was, let's address it after our tea break at 12:15.
They went to lunch? Come on, man. You know what, Jimbo? You've been one of our top employees. You've been with us for a long time. I trust your judgment, but I must admit I'm famished. That's what it feels like.
Like, let's go crush a sando, and then we'll get to that leak.
And it's like the parallels to the managerial incompetence here, where it's like, ask more questions now. If you can't do it now, get someone to do it now.
Yeah.
It's like the same thing with Chernobyl. Like, you're getting the parallels of Chernobyl. It's just like, oh, what do you know? You know, are you trying to make a fool of me?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's just like, hey, it's like, we've got this like extremely toxic gas that's actively leaking.
Yeah, I'm aware. Yeah.
We'll get to it after lunch.
I mean, like, is it on fire? Come on. Like,
what are you talking about?
15 minutes till break time, man. You complain about break time all day. Isn't this what you want?
Yeah, and it's, oh my gosh. Anyway, so in the meantime, the employees are instructed to continue looking for leaks.
Huh. So, we have a perfect storm brewing. Not only do you know that this problem is happening, not only have you ignored all the warning signs that have actually seemed to have worked to tell you that something's wrong, you're sending them back in. Send the boys back in.
Get it back in there. Keep looking for more leaks, buddy. Tea break concludes at 12:45 a.m.
Okay.
So now, we're an hour out from, the supervisor being told what is happening, and nothing has been done.
No, they're just looking for leaks, which is just identification phase. No risk mitigation yet.
The reaction in tank E610 very quickly at this point moves to a critical state. Within 5 minutes of 12:40, so basically by 12:45, the pressure in the tank has gone to 40 psi, which, let's do a little bit of quick math, is 20 times the designed tank rating.
Ooh.
And the temperature in the tank were maxed out at 77 degrees Fahrenheit.
Oh, so that's as high as the gauges show?
That's as high as the gauge goes, because you're supposed to store this stuff refrigerated.
Is it not?
Well, there is a refrigeration system on site, Derek. Would you like to take a guess as to the condition of that refrigeration system?
Well, based on I wouldn't be surprised if the toilets in this freaking factory worked, so I'm going to guess it doesn't work. I'm just going to guess it doesn't work.
The refrigeration system meant to cool the tanks containing liquid MIC had been shut down in January of 1982.
What?
And the Freon and the Freon had been removed in June of 1984.
Oh, okay. Wait a minute. So you done took, not only did you turn the air conditioner off, you took the part that makes the, oh my God, you can't even turn it back on. You took out the refrigerant. You took out the refrigerant.
So
years ago. Derek. How did they get, what? My question now is, how did they get this far?
So then there's this. You're gonna love this part.
Oh, I bet I'm not.
So there's actually like an overheating alarm that is built into the system.
Oh, that's convenient. That's a good thing to do.
Do you know what they did to it?
Man, this thing's annoying the heck out of me. It keeps going off. Let me mute that real quick.
Yup. Because they disconnected the Freon, like they weren't running the refrigerator, so it was always over the temperature it was supposed to be at.
Right.
You're supposed to store this stuff at 40 degrees Fahrenheit, basically. Even better, lower temperature, because again, you have less pressure, the gas is less volatile. And because basically like the boiling point of MIC is pretty low. Like in order to store it as liquid, it's got to be cold. And so basically what's happening is because it's so hot, it's boiling. And that's what's causing it to become a gas again. And that's what's causing the pressure to increase. So at 12:45 p.m., because the tank is now very hot and at very high pressure.
So we're like, what, 12 hours after the tea break at noon?
No, we're like 5 minutes after tea break stops.
Is this 12:45 a.m. or p.m.?
A.m.
Gotcha.
This is the night shift. Sorry.
I'm following you.
So tank storage temperatures are supposed to be below 40 degrees Fahrenheit. General tank storage temperatures at this time will have ranged anywhere from 59 to 104 degrees Fahrenheit. It's basically just atmospheric temperature.
That is a huge range.
That is a huge range and a very much outside spec. So an employee is like, so now they're like, okay, well, we've had our lunch because we're the night shift and we take lunch at midnight. And so they're starting to like, okay, what do we actually have to do to this? And one employee basically sees the concrete slab above the tank just crack and split open as the blow-off valve, the emergency relief valve, bursts open and the pressure in the tank continues to increase in spite of the fact that it is now venting directly to atmosphere.
So the speed of the gas release is lower than the speed of the gas intake? That is horrifying.
Well, yeah, because it's this exothermic reaction, it's getting hotter, and as it gets hotter,
it's expanding.
It expands and it reacts faster.
Yeah, it's like this is a great opportunity to talk about activation energy, right? Like you always think about catalyst for reactions. One of the first catalysts they teach you about in chemistry is heat. You know what another one is? More reactant. Like it's a perfect storm of stupidity here.
It is. And because I would actually hazard to guess as well, is like once you have it in a gas form, like once the MIC is in a gas form, you have more surface area as well. So like there's more basically available molecules to react.
Right. Because at a very baseline, like this is really dumbing it down, mostly for myself. This is how I understood chemistry. You're looking at in your little vial, right? Or if you're using a gas cylinder, you're looking at how often, what is the probability that these two molecules that need to touch each other will touch each other if you boil the reaction. Of course, like you said, you have more speed of the molecules. You're increasing the probability that two of them to react. This is the equivalent of just like you have given these molecules a adults only cruise and they're an STI and it is just everywhere, all over the place because no one did any safety mechanisms, not one. Sorry, go on.
Oh, yes. So
surely it gets better. Expecting.
Oh, yes, it gets better. Yes. The direct atmospheric venting should have been mitigated or prevented or at least mitigated by the 3 safety devices which were malfunctioning, not in use, insufficiently sized, or otherwise rendered inoperable. We already talked about the refrigeration system. Obviously, the flare tower is not in use right now because it was decommissioned for repair, which had not been completed at this time. And then the vent scrubbers, which had also been deactivated because they did not have enough caustic soda or power to safely stop the leak of the magnitude that was produced.
I mean, at this point, just put the MIC through the fire suppression system so when there is a fire, it just sprays more of it. Because that's the equivalent of what you're doing. There is no safety system. This is just a lie. This is a lie.
This is horrible. So in 45 to 60 minutes, 30 tons of MIC escaped the tank directly into the atmosphere.
And I'm guessing this is like a warehouse. It's like a closed building, right?
Nope.
No?
Nope.
Is that where
this is just basically here. I'll send you a picture of it.
Oh, spice.
But basically the compound. So it's a fairly large compound. So like this picture is probably not everything. But what I understand is that basically
it's just outside.
It's just out in the open. Like everything's like there's not really any walls really to speak of.
Okay, so when you say vent to the atmosphere, you meant directly into the atmosphere.
I meant directly into the atmosphere.
Huh.
Yeah, so it's not good. Within 2 hours, 40 tons of the 42 tons of MIC have escaped into the atmosphere. And then they were blown directly southeast over Bhopal by the prevailing winds. Now, Derek.
Yes.
Let's jump back into the corporate office, right?
All right, so putting my tie on.
Or the supervisor, right?
No, I'm putting my jumpsuit on.
Mr. Cotton, the supervisor.
Jim.
Do you want to hear the good news or the bad news?
All right, Jim, start with the bad news. I don't like where this is going.
Well, the bad news is that 40 tons of MIC have escaped directly into the atmosphere.
40 pounds of MIC ain't too bad.
Oh, no, 40 tons.
I beg your pardon?
Yes, 40 tons. So now receiving that information, what would you do?
Cry a little bit, maybe call emergency services, but that is, I'm assuming I'm a terrible human being. I'm gonna go get a snack.
So, kind of. So basically what happens, actually you're not far off, right? So basically one of the UCIL employees triggers the plant's alarm system at 12:50 a.m. as the concentration of the gas in and around the area is becoming hard to tolerate. So basically enough gas has leaked out into the plant and into the surrounding area that people are basically having to leave.
Everyone crying.
Everyone's like, yeah, everyone's crying, coughing, headaches, like all this kind of stuff. And activation of that system is supposed to trigger 2 different alarms.
Okay.
There's one alarm that specifically is inside the plant.
Right. Tell the workers to get out.
Tell the workers to get out. And then there's a second directed to the outside of the plant to alert the general public and the city of Bhopal.
Yeah, hit them with the wee-woo alarm. Oh, it's all gone bad. Wee-woo. Let me guess which one didn't work. The one that would work for both? The tell everyone alarm? The hear ye, it's all fucked alarm? It's gone?
Yep.
What in this plant works, Jim? Name one thing in this plant that works besides incompetence.
So basically, in 1982, they had disconnected the switch that basically set both off, right? Because what's supposed to happen is when you set off one alarm, both of them go off. Right? Not so.
What do you mean they deactivated it?
They decoupled the systems from each other. So you can activate one, but not the other.
We keep waking up the neighborhood every time we do a fire drill.
Pretty much. So like...
What is this? This sounds like a joke. This sounds like a sci-fi book, like something I would read in a fiction novel. Are you kidding me?
So basically, the public siren sounds very briefly at 12:50 a.m. and then was quickly turned off. And they quickly turned it off to prevent alarming the public.
Motherfucker, that's the point of an alarm.
And this was company procedure to avoid alarming the public over inconsequential leaks. Right?
Right.
So like occasionally you'll have small leaks and then the plant alarm would go off and then that would mean that the general public alarm would go off, right? So you'd leak a couple pounds into the atmosphere and everyone would freak out.
Okay. So they got a couple false alarms down the road. So they just said,
the boy who cried wolf.
Yeah, exactly. You know what you do? My carbon monoxide detector in my house keeps pinging every now and then when I open my garage door. Let me just take the batteries out of it real quick.
Exactly. So, meanwhile, workers at the plant evacuate upwind.
Okay. So because they got the alarm. I'm guessing I know where this is going, and I don't like it. It's going downwind.
So then, at 1 a.m., the superintendent of Bhopal's police was informed by telephone that the residents of Kola, which is another town, which is 2 kilometers from the plant, significantly further away than Bhopal, were evacuating. Basically, they were fleeing a gas leak at 1 a.m.
Surely that's not related to this. That's 2 kilometers away. So that's really far.
Surely not.
Yeah.
So the police then call the plant between 1:25 and 2:10. They call them 3 times.
Hello?
The first 2 times, the plants assure them everything is fine. Everything is okay.
All good, man.
On the last attempt, this is a quote. Quote, "We don't know what has happened, sir." End of quote.
That's it?
That's it.
So you go from, oh no, false alarm, no problems here.
Everything's fine.
Ring, this is the police. Are you sure? No, everything's great. It's fine. I think everything's cool. Ring, this is the police. Hello? It's all for naught. All hope is lost. Like, that is such a jarring shift in tone from the first 2 calls. So basically what happens is that, people are being admitted to the hospital. And initially, the hospital, the city hospital, Hamadia Hospital, they were told, like, this is ammonia. We suspect this is ammonia, which is, guess what?
not what it is.
No,
And then
ammonia's not good for you, but that's way less reactive than the other.
They're later told that this is phosgene, which again is
Closer,
bad,
but not
not as bad as MIC. And then finally, they are eventually told by USIL that it's MIC. But that's what they don't say anything else. It's
so
like, what is MIC?
Got these hospitals, the folks that might actually have the chemistry background and knowledge to treat it properly, they're mistreating it based on bad information for the first few hours?
Yes.
Huh.
And then...
Outstanding.
Yeah, because none of the hospital know what MIC is.
Right, why would they? They probably have a quick reference guide to common things found around the region. Like there's usually, hey, this chemical plant 2 miles down the road has these things to worry about. Right,
but this is also a general purpose hospital. They gotta I can't imagine a regular nurse is gonna know what methyl isocyanate is, much less how to treat it.
Why
just
would
off
they?
the top.
Even
of
if
their
they
head.
know, they wouldn't know how to treat it.
Yeah. And then again, it's 1982, so it's not like you can just Google what MIC is.
No, you got to crack open the medical encyclopedia or something.
Good luck. So anyway, by 2:00 a.m., the MIC leak had pretty much petered itself out. And 15 minutes later, the public siren was sounded for an extended period of time. At this point, at this point,
a little late for that, don't you think?
After the siren sounds, a UCIL employee goes to the police control room to inform them of the leak. And that the leak, at this point, quote unquote, the leak had been plugged.
Doubt.
Not that just all of the contents of the tank had vented.
Oh, so this is one of those, he said the thing weird. The leak has been plugged because we ran out of stuff to leak.
Yeah, but they didn't say that last part, right? I think part of this is they're trying to save face a little bit. So it's we stopped the leak. We're okay, we're the heroes.
We done it. We saved the city. Everything's on fire.
Exactly.
This is dangerous. There are so many levels of incompetence.
The problem with this is a lot of people went outside to investigate what was going on.
As you do when sirens go off, The
siren's going on. So rather than being able to instruct people to shelter in place or evacuate before the gas arrives, they're now just opening their doors to the gas in the streets.
And it's odorless. They have no idea, right?
It's basically odorless, and it is also heavier than air. So you know what that means, Derek?
The water supply.
Well, that too, but also basically rather than just going up into the atmosphere, it descends onto the city.
And let's take that into a microstate. As you inhale it into your lungs, is it going out? Because air is lighter than this chemical that you're describing. It's just like a nitrogen base. I guess it is a nitrogen based thing. Your body's really warm. If it becomes liquid in your lungs, it's staying down there.
Well, so it's not going to become liquid because it's too hot.
Low boiling point.
Yeah. So it's a gas at room temperature.
Okay,
so
wonderful.
at body temperature, it's going to. But
either way,
it is
it's still
going to
be
in your lungs.
It's not ideal.
And you got to think about this too. You got to think who's going to be affected by this the most.
Oh, the poor.
Well, yes, but also the short people. Who's short, Derek?
I would say a majority of the, this is not me roasting them, but a majority of the population of India as they show on their census. Seriously, no, that's the thing, right? It's just babies. I'm supposed to think babies. Right, children.
Yeah, the children.
God damn. They're not all winners, boys. The guesses aren't all winners. Who's shorter? Oh, the country of India.
Entirety of India.
With the I don't know, the determination of someone in that plan. Honestly, I was so sure of myself. Well, I for a moment I forgot children existed.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, it's really terrible. But basically, short people and children are really affected by this because the gas stays relatively low to the ground. So the initial effects of exposure are coughing, severe eye irritation, a feeling of suffocation because it displaces the oxygen in your lungs, like you were saying, burning in the respiratory tract.
Oh,
What is blepharospasm? I don't know what that is. Do you know what that is?
spell it.
Blepharospasm.
No, I can't say with confidence what that is. I'm assuming some kind of involuntarily controlled muscle group, but I don't know.
Yeah, so it's involuntary contraction of the eye.
God damn, I'm good.
Yeah, the eyelid. So basically, like you're uncontrollably blinking.
Man, you know what? Thanks, Mercer University. You did good. I learned something, clearly.
Yeah.
Right on.
All right.
That's not ideal. So you're blinking crazy.
Not good. You're crying. You're blinking crazy. You can't really breathe very well. You're starting to have stomach pains and vomiting.
Oh, there's one person who, like, I guess went to the India equivalent of a festival the day before that lives in this town, and they can't tell if it's like after a fest. Like, oh, you guys went to the festival too? Just blinking uncontrollably and stuff.
It's just like, I don't know if I'm hungover, if I have acute methyl isocyanate poisoning.
Why not both? God.
Hey, get crossed, am I right?
So just for my reference, so I could keep our story straight, this is the account of the company, right?
Well, this is just what happened.
Oh, so this is the truth, as far as we know.
So this is just like the direct activities of that day.
Okay, I like that.
We'll get into what caused this accident that is disputed, and we'll get into that.
Okay. But like the play-by-play is brutal for this one. There's so many things.
Yeah, play-by-play is real brutal, and the morning brings with it more brutality.
The morning brings more mourning.
More mourning, exactly. Because now people are actually starting to die. And like thousands of people are dying.
Oh, it's like that quick.
Yes. So like the immediate immediately, basically people die, about almost 4,000 people die within the first couple of days.
Whoa. That's nuts.
It's estimated about 8,000 people had died within 2 weeks, and then another 8,000 in the following years.
Sheesh. And that's not even considering long-term implications like cancers and other different,
Yeah, so
breathing, like lung cancer, breathing effects.
A government affidavit in 2006 stated that the leak caused over 500,000 injuries, including 40,000 temporary partial injuries and another 4,000 severe and permanent disabling injuries, along with the deaths. So it's pretty big. It's brutal. And then basically, what happens is basically in the morning, thousands of people are dying because they're choking. Their circulatory systems are collapsing. There's pulmonary edema, so I guess that's fluid in the lungs. There's also cerebral bleeding, like in the brain, necrosis of the kidneys, degeneration of the liver. I mean, this is really nasty.
Killing you inside and out, and not every, but most. Think about all the major organs you just described.
Yeah, it's literally. This is a pesticide. This is basically a pesticide.
You would actually be better off walking into a unstable reactor room, because at least that'll kill you slowly. Holy.
And then, and this is very rapid, especially for people who are exposed to significant amounts. So they end up doing like a laboratory simulation of the conditions, and they basically think that the gas cloud wasn't just MIC. Because the MIC was reacting with all this stuff and all the contaminants and the iron and all this type of stuff. Ew. As it's escaping, there's also chloroform in the gas. There's dichloromethane in the gas, hydrogen chloride in the gas, which basically turns into acid in your lungs. There's methylamine in the gas. There's all kinds of really nasty stuff.
Wow, I didn't even consider that. So all of the unfortunate lack of maintenance that causes all of this extra, like I said, extra iron. Who knows what kinds of like sulfite-based materials they use to also clean that. You're making other deadly chemicals, or at least not pleasant chemicals, on top of the super deadly one.
Yep.
You're getting like a martini of death.
Yes, it's very bad. So immediately, this is where we start getting into the who do we trust more, the government or the company?
Everyone put your detective hats on, scratch your chin, light your pipe. It's a wild ride.
It's a wild ride. So immediately, the Indian government closes the plants to everybody, including
the
the
investigators.
Union Carbide.
Also, even the company can't be in there.
Yes. And then they subsequently then neglect to make data about it public.
Neglect or choose not to. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Like, yeah, like who's to say?
Like, who's to say? I don't think that was an accident.
And so basically this investigation is conducted completely by the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research and the Central Bureau of Investigation of India. It should be noted that the CEO, Warren Anderson of Union Carbide, blanked. They immediately, together with they immediately traveled to India.
Okay.
They're like, we have to get there. We have to figure out what's happened.
Fair.
Right? And immediately he is placed under house arrest.
Oh, in India? By the Indian government?
In India. As soon as he arrives in India, he is placed under house arrest.
Where have I heard this story before? Arresting the investigators?
Is basic, well, because he's the CEO too, right? So like the Indian people are understandably very mad at him. Because fair. It was his company that did this. But also they're also preventing him from figuring out what happened, right? And they basically tell him to leave India. So he's basically kicked out of India. He's not deported, but he's basically told to leave.
Hey, you best get out of here.
Yeah.
Before you can never leave. That sounds like a threat.
Yeah, it is. Like they're like, hey, you have to get out of here. And then again, in the company's credit, Union Carbide immediately organizes a team of medical experts and supplies and equipment to begin working with the local medical community to like help people on the ground.
Most people would have wiped their hands of it. At least they're trying to give them something to work with. Okay.
Yeah. So the healthcare system, of course, is immediately overloaded because like 500,000 people got affected by this.
Mm-hmm.
And also, most people were not aware of the proper treatment for a MIC gas inhalation because it's not something you see every day.
Right. Like, that's very specific.
Most of the time, if you go up to a nurse or a doctor, like, what do you see in the ER every day? And they're like, I mostly see people with bottles shoved up their ass.
Right.
Or whatever it is.
That
like cuts, bruises, scrapes, gunshot wounds, whatever, bottles up the ass.
It's the first thing on the list.
Apparently, it's very common. So anyway.
Yeah, you see any MIC poisoning? What did you just call me?
Exactly. There's like mass funerals, cremations. One guy,
jarring shift of tone.
Bad. Yeah, it's not good. A few days after the gas leak, the trees all lose their leaves.
That's never a good sign.
That's never a good sign. A lot of animals die. 2,000 buffalo, goats, and other animals had to be collected and buried because they all just died. Supplies, including food, became really scarce because everyone was afraid that it got contaminated. Fishing was prohibited because of the water shore. Like they were afraid of the water.
Yeah.
So guess what they do?
Who?
The plant.
Nothing?
Well, okay. This is kind of one of those things. I'm going to make you really mad, and then I'm going to tell you why they did it.
Okay, I'm ready.
On December 16th, they reactivate the plant and continue manufacturing the pesticide.
Oh, Jesus fucking Christ. No. Jim. Say psych right now.
Nope. But I'll tell you why. It's because there was no safe alternative to dispose of the chemicals. Right? Because there's no other way to pump it out. I guess is what they're claiming.
No, that's all right. Let's assume that's true.
And so they have water carrying helicopters continuously circling the plant during the entirety of the production. It's wild.
Are they just expecting it to go up in flames?
Well, they're like, okay, so one of the things that you can do if it's leaking, you can actually basically spray water on it, and the water will capture the gas, and then it will fall out, so it won't escape into the atmosphere.
Okay, like making a little shield for it. That makes sense. Sure.
And they actually also had one of these water cannon things, but it wasn't it wasn't big enough to actually be able to handle it. So again, kind of and also couldn't reach the top of the thing. So it was just it didn't have enough water pressure to be
brought
able to
actually Nerf water gun.
To a firefight, exactly. But yeah, it's a cluster. It's just an absolute cluster.
That is a train wreck, start to finish.
It's a huge train wreck. And basically, the government in India immediately passes the Bhopal Gas Leak Disaster Act, which gives them the right to represent all of the victims in or outside of India. And this is going to be important because this actually goes to legal court in the United States. So then that's kind of the immediate story of it. And then as we get into kind of the legal consequences, there's some back and forth between the Indian government and UCC, and there's some initial stuff where basically UCC obviously doesn't want to admit fault for this accident because it was horrible. And basically, I think this is a really important detail in this whole thing. The federal part of this is really wild, is because this actually gets tried in the United States court,
which is wild.
Because this happened in Indian territory, but it's because the UCC, Union Carbide, is an American company.
Oh, important detail.
And it's their subsidiary UCIL, which is operating in India.
So they're liable,
potentially, right? And basically, what immediately happens, there's a federal district court judge who suggests that Union Carbide should, by fundamental human decency, provide between $5 and $10 million for immediate aid, right? Immediate aid. And then UCC, on the notion, basically they're like, okay, we can do that, but that has to come with that we do not admit guilt yet. We are not admitting guilt by giving this disaster relief.
Right, we're just trying to do the right thing without screwing ourselves.
So they basically offer a $5 million relief fund, and then the Indian government turns down that offer.
Why?
I'm not exactly sure. And we're going to get into that here in a little bit. So then, later on, and this is now 1986, UCC proposes a settlement figure of $350 million that would generate between $500 and $600 million over 20 years. So it's kind of like a fund, it's a trust fund for all these people. And then in May, basically the litigation is transferred from the United States courts to Indian courts. So they're basically okay, that's what it is. Now it has to go to Indian court in India to be able to continue this, because this is no longer United States problem.
Right. They have to wipe their hands off it at some point.
Yeah, at some point, this happens in India. India has to.
They're the body.
Yeah. So then, the government of India refuses that offer from Union Carbide and claims $3.3 billion in damages. And then the Supreme Court, the Indian Supreme Court, basically tells them both, y'all are being stupid. Try again. Just start over. And eventually they come to a settlement, and Union Carbide agrees to pay $470 million for damages, and they immediately pay it.
That day.
Here you go.
Yeah.
Boom.
Well,
done.
not that day, but it's one lump sum, pretty much.
Yes, pretty much. And as part of that, they actually sell their shares in the UCIL, right? So basically, Union Carbide is like, all right, like we're out, like we're not, like we're selling our shares. This is in y'all's hands now, and this is what you wanted because this is what you took us to court to get us to do, basically. And there's a lot of, there's a huge amount of legal battles that really happened even up until like the late 2000s.
Yeah, I guess you did mention one in 2006. Like that's...
Yeah, I mean, the most recent court filing is in 2023.
Really? There's still... I mean, those sicknesses aren't going to go away, but it's wild that the United States parent company, I guess their lawyers came to the terms of like everything that's going on. It's best to just dissolve this subsidiary than to even try to... They saw no profit coming back. That has to be the only reason, right?
I think it's partly that, and then also partly like, I mean, I don't know if I would want to keep doing that business, right? Like I would kind of want to get out of that.
Wipe your hands of it.
Yeah, and just be like, I don't want to work with chemicals anymore because that resulted in the deaths of, like thousands of people.
I feel like that's more of a, I mean, I'm putting my evil corporation hat on. Yeah, outsource it somewhere else.
That's fair.
We'll start up in Singapore this time.
So let's talk a little bit about what could have caused this.
All right, here we go. Just two options on the shelf.
And this is where you can either put on your evil government hat or your evil corporation hat. So there's two distinct arguments for it. One of these arguments is basically there's the corporate negligence point of view, which argues that basically there's a really potent fireball mixture, powder keg, of very under-maintained facilities, very poor quality facilities, a very like lackadaisical attitude towards the safety procedures,
bad training,
bad training, and then basically what that all happened and what it all caused is that the employees didn't know any better, and during their cleaning routine, trying to keep this facility, I guess, doing something, they caused the water to get into the tank. That's the official point of view of the Indian government.
Right. So they're attributing blame fully on the company. It's y'all's fault.
Company.
Blah, blah, blah.
Fully on the company. There's also a worker sabotage argument held by Union Carbide.
Ooh, a little corporate espionage going down?
A little bit of corporate shenanigans. And so what they think, basically what they argued is that the design of the tanks made it such that it was not physically possible for water to enter the tank without concerted human effort. And that basically they think that a rogue individual employee hooked up a water hose, they took off a valve on the side of the tank and hooked up a water hose to it and sabotaged the facility.
I guess, let's just go down that rabbit hole for a minute. What do you have to gain?
You're just mad. You're like, I hate working at this place. It's broken all the time. I don't want to be here. It's freaking midnight. Like, let me just fuck some shit up.
All right. Now, I'm hearing you, right? And we've talked about these employees before. But isn't it more likely that if they really wanted to, if you're trying not to get caught, why don't you just set the thing on fire and leave? You have to have such a technical knowledge of what's going to happen for that to work, for it to be corporate espionage. It's so...
Right.
Okay, go on. Let me stop.
Worker sabotage.
Workers. It's like someone...
And that's like... I don't think there's a very clear answer one way or the other, because there's definitely shady bullshit on both sides.
Oh, right? Full show. Could be a little column A, a little column B.
It probably is, quite frankly. So let's look a little bit at the corporate negligence first. And so basically, they're citing that the tanks were filled beyond their capacity, recommended levels. The poor maintenance on the facility was really abhorrent, right? Mm-hmm. Like the facility was not maintained pretty much at all.
Nothing worked.
Safety systems were deliberately bypassed. And some of those safety devices weren't even like they weren't big enough to begin with. Like they were not capable of actually handling stuff. And then also they weren't investing into their people. So like a lot of their employees had very little experience with MIC because they were no longer actually producing MIC at that factory. So, they're basically saying, here's a quote, cuts meant less stringent quality control and thus looser safety rules. A pipe leaked, don't replace it. Employees said they were told. MIC workers need more training, they could do with less. Promotions were halted, seriously affecting employee morale and driving some of the most skilled employees elsewhere. End quote.
Oh, so you have like this localized brain drain situation. You're treating these folks so badly that the ones that know better and know they see the writing on the wall, of course they're getting out of there.
Yeah, it's like, I don't want to be a part of this.
Understandable.
So, in addition to that, as I said previously, the equipment to regulate this type of disaster was not sufficient. Like the deluge guns, which are basically like the water spray guns to
like
because
put
MIC
the
is actually
particulate down kind of situation.
Yeah, so MIC is soluble in water. So if you spray a water mist at the gas column, it'll actually condense out.
And you can just pump the water into another tank and kind of isolate
and
it.
you can contain that, right? But there wasn't enough water pressure at the plant to actually operate the guns. Like, so like, and then we talked about like the scrubbers were out of commission. The flare tower was out of commission.
Shut it down.
The refrigeration system was out of commission.
Took the Freon out.
Exactly. And then, there's every 2 years they were doing safety audits. In the United States and in Europe, UCC plants, they did a safety audit every year.
Okay.
But in India, they were doing it every 2 years.
Clearly not.
Yeah, that's what I said, right?
And even 2 years, you would know refrigerator off, flare tower gone.
Because in 1982, you're telling me that in 1982 you didn't look at this plant and say, "Wow, this place looks like a gosh darn dump." Like I just can't imagine it.
Those safety audits, even at 2 years apart, would have prevented some of this.
Yeah. So the UCC basically they say. In May of 1982, they do their safety audit, and they were aware of a total of 61 hazards, 30 of them major. And then they indicated that worker performance was well below standards. So it's not like they were not aware of this issue.
Right. They had it reported.
They had it reported. It was indicated that they had fixed the report, like many of the items were fixed temporarily in 1982, but by 1984, the conditions had just gone back down.
Oh, so they did attempt to do some, I guess.
Like they did like a patch job, but they didn't actually fix like the root causes of the problems.
Band-Aid fixes for you.
Yeah. And so then basically, this is rich, right? So there's a West Virginia plant in the United States that basically operates on the same principles. And in a internal UCC audit of that facility, they found that, quote, the planned response would not be timely or effective enough to prevent catastrophic failure of the tanks. And then they never filed that report. They never sent that report to the Bhopal plant, even though the main design was the same.
Wow. So they caught it on a mirror facility in the States.
In the United States.
But
absolutely.
Because the regulation wasn't as strict, there was no legal ramification.
It's like, well, it's in India. It's a world away. Who cares?
And let's be honest, even if they did send the report, just based on what we've learned about this specific facility, would anything have actually happened, even if it came from the top?
Right. So then let's talk a little bit about the other side of that, which is kind of this idea of the employee sabotage. So according to the corporate negligence audit or argument, the workers had been cleaning out pipes with water near the tank. And that's what allegedly caused this exothermic runaway reaction. So the idea is that the water was diverted due to a combination of improper maintenance, leaking, and clogging, and that eventually made its way into the MIC tank. There's also some suggestion that water might have been introduced as backflow from a defective vent gas scrubber, because basically you're using water to capture escaping gases and
is this the same scrubber that they shut down?
I don't know. Like that's part of it is like a lot of this data is not very clear because it's not been released, and the people who controlled the data was the Indian government.
Right. And also,
right,
like
so
you know equations, you do so much calculus. When you add one variable, it adds a tenfold sometimes amount of difficulty. We're adding so many variables, it's impossible.
There's so many variables.
It's hard to use the scientific method to figure out what caused this. Like you would need simulations and such just to get some idea. Because what's true? That's the key.
Yeah.
What data is true?
And there's only one source of data, right? Like that's part of it too, is like when you want to cover something up, the best way to do it is to control the scene.
They say history is written by the victors, like usually said in war, but in situations like this, still rings true
here. So there's three main, there's an analysis from Union Carbide by a guy named Arthur Little. And he claims the negligence argument is impossible for three main reasons. First, the pipes that were being used nearby were only a ½ inch in diameter and basically could not create enough hydraulic pressure to raise the water enough to get into the tank. So that says, he's saying that removes the idea that it could backflow. The water should not be able to backflow into the MIC tank because it's not big enough of a pipe, basically.
Okay.
Second reason, a key intermediate valve. So basically there's a valve that separates the pipes from the tank. That would have had to have been open in order for the water to get back into the tank. That valve was tagged closed and had been inspected and found to be closed, and the closed valve could only leak. Obviously, water could only make past it if that valve leaked. And in 1985, they tested it. The government of India found the valve to be non-leaking.
Okay. What's reason 3?
And then 3, in order for water to reach the MIC tank from the pipe cleaning area, it would have had to flow through a significant network of pipes ranging from 6 to 8 inches in diameter before rising 10 feet and then flowing into the tank. If that had occurred, most of the water should have remained in the pipes because there was no drain for the pipes because they weren't made to hold water, they were made to hold gas.
Okay.
Investigation by the Indian government in 1985 revealed those pipes to be bone dry. So now it's just like, what's going on here? What's the truth? So now, this is interesting. So the Dow Chemical Company, who has since purchased Union Carbide, they maintain a website dedicated to this incident. And they claim the accident was the result of sabotage on that website, stating that the sufficient safety systems were in place and operative to prevent the intrusion of water. Which, if you think about it, like, is kind of a sneaky way to say the tank shouldn't have gotten water into it, not to say that the sufficient safety measures were in place to contain it should it have failed.
Right.
Right.
They're saying, hey, the way you're saying this broke is unfeasible, and even though we're the parent company, it's been years, please don't sue us because it's not our problem.
Right. But they're not actually admitting that the facility was in poor repair.
Never
right? Like that to me is what pisses me off.
That's what every lawyer tells you, whether it's a traffic stop or something of this scale. Never admit fault. Even if you're the wrongest you've ever been. There's a lawyer on the internet that says, just shut the fuck up. That's the best thing you can do for your lawyer.
This is very fast.
And that's what Dow's doing.
I need my lawyer.
That's what Dow's doing. They're just lawyer shouldn't have happened mathematically.
Yep. So there's a couple different pieces of evidence that the UCC claims the plant staff falsified records and data to basically distance their personal responsibility for this tragedy. So a key witness testified that when he entered the control room at 12:15 a.m. prior to the disaster, the atmosphere was quote unquote tense and quiet. Okay, what does that mean? I don't know.
Tense and quiet.
The instrument supervisor testified that when he arrived at the scene immediately following the accident, he noticed the local pressure indicator on the critical tank, 610, was missing, and that he found a hose lying next to the empty manhead created by the missing pressure indicator.
Ooh, big if true.
And that the hose had water running out of it. And this testimony was corroborated by other witnesses too. So like that seems pretty significant to me.
Right.
Graphological analysis reveals that major attempts had been made to alter logs and destroy log evidence. So it's like, okay, well, this is also suspicious. Another log file that was recovered basically shows the control team had attempted to purge 1 ton of material out of tank 610 immediately prior to the disaster. And then there was an attempt made to cover up that transfer.
Interesting.
So, and the reason they think this is happening is because the water is heavier than the MIC, they were basically trying to get the water out of the tank. Right? So there's the theory from the company goes that a rogue employee basically filled the tank with water.
Mm-hmm.
The employees then found out that they had filled the tank with water, so they tried to get the water out of the tank. The problem being they had no way to pump the water out of the tank because the nitrogen pressure system wasn't functioning. So they could not pressurize the tank to get the water out.
And that tells you 2 things in one stroke, if true, right? We have to put the big ol' allegedly in front of this because we don't know what actually happened.
That's true.
Right? Like,
allegedly.
That's the company saying they knew that there was water introduced to the tank, didn't say why, and they attempted to mitigate it.
This is the on-site staff.
Right.
Right. Like I think that's a separate, like in terms of the company, that's a distinctive separation between Union Carbide and the on-site UCIL Indian,
right. Subsidiary,
workforce.
Yeah,
subsidiary company, exactly. But yeah, so from this evidence that the UCC puts forward, there definitely seems to be some evidence to support their claim that this was actually a sabotage. And then their last piece of evidence that's brought up here is there's second and third hand accounts that there was an operator who was basically like here's the quote, right? Like, quote, he had been told by a close friend of one of the MIC operators that water had entered through a tube and had been connected to the tank. But like, how reliable is that?
It's just word of mouth at this point.
There's
no logs to accompany it. There's clearly no surveillance capacity in this plant, or if it was, not anymore. No evidence of it.
Yeah. So those are basically the 2 potential failure modes that are presented. Is it's water got into the tank somehow.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, was it sabotage or was it truly, negligence, purely corporate negligence? And I think really what you have to get to at the end of the day is, even if it was sabotage, there was a significant amount of corporate negligence that played into that.
That caused it to run away. You could have water in the tank without this exploding into 40 tons out of the facility.
Exactly. Especially if you could pump a lot of that water out.
Right. And who's to say if you pause production for a day, you can't fly in the proper pump or whatever. I don't know enough about the engineering of this tank to know what you would need, but there's a way, right? There has got to be a way to engineer a solution here if your intention was to, instead of cover up, fix.
Yeah.
Jim, what do you think?
I think
you're an engineer. What makes sense?
So it's tough, right? Because the thing is, like, to me, what this is a failure of, like, the system is only as good as the people operating it, right? So to me, like, this is a failure to adequately train your staff, right? Especially, and frankly, it's a failure to look after your staff, right? Like, why do you have this disgruntled employee who's like, I'm going to fill this tank up with water and blow this whole operation to the ground? Like, why is
How does it get to that point?
How does it get to that point? And then beyond that, like, okay, Well, you're aware of all these failures within your facility. Why are you not fixing it?
Even one. If they told me, oh, we were spending our time working on the flare tower, so that's why we didn't do the refrigeration. There was none of that. It was just, it's been
but those they'd been out of service for years.
And it's one of those things. Nothing bad happened, so they're just like, it kind of reaffirms the I don't need to do anything. It takes away the urgency. I don't need to do anything.
It does. And then also, like, I think there's especially, and I think we see this with a lot of corporations of like, okay, well, we're in order to save money, in order to make more profit, we're just going to cut as many corners as we legally can. And, basically, as long as, like, here's the thing, like Warren Anderson, right? Like the CEO, it's like, okay, well, that, it really, he obviously, I think he was to a certain extent distraught that this happened, but like, guess what? He does not get held personally liable for something like this.
It doesn't surprise me.
Right? And because it's like, okay, the company, Union Carbide, had to pay $470 million. But guess who walked away with his paycheck?
The CEO.
Did he keep his job? And the CFO? I don't know. I didn't look into it.
No, either way. You're right. There was no... Now it feels like nowadays, because I gotta put this in... I know we've been going for a while, but like... You got to think about...
We've been doing this like 2 hours.
Yeah, whatever. You got to think about the role of the CEO at the time. Like, this is the same generation as, like, the Jack Welches of the world. And we might get into talking about what does CEO mean changed around the 80s. It really did change its job description to what we see today as this figurehead to back in the day. Folks were actually, like, at least, I would say a majority, were actually invested in the work that their people were doing. And actually were, like, more hands on the ground. You might see your CEO actually on a factory floor once a year, which is something that's borderline unheard of now.
Right. And I think, like, yeah, but I mean, ultimately, in my opinion, yes, like, to a certain extent, like, if someone wants to break your stuff, they're going to break it.
Right. But you would have ways to find out.
I mean, it was the 80s, right? So, like, you don't really have, like, security cameras and stuff like that, but, like, the company, and obviously they were found liable to a certain extent, but you are like, it is your responsibility to maintain a safe working environment and to provide adequate training to your employees. And that was obviously not followed. Like, I don't think there is an argument to be made that the company was not negligent at all.
No. So what it's kind of boiling down to, yes, it is possible that there was sabotage. There's evidence that it could have been that, yes. But what there definitely was corporate negligence. Whether that's the end-all, be-all, smarter minds than us are going to determine if they're still having courts in...
If ever. I mean, because, again, part of this, too, is I think the Indian government bears a large responsibility for this as well, because... to me, what it seems like is they were kind of gunning for the biggest amount of payout possible.
I mean, obviously so. Where do you think that money went, Jim?
Exactly, right?
Where do you think that money
that's
went?
Going to the government.
I haven't heard of any folks from this small town in India being millionaires because they got the money that they deserve. No, come on.
No.
Somebody's pocket's nice and lined.
Exactly. And like, to me, like, that is another like surplus tragedy of it, right? Is like, the old political adage, never let a good tragedy go to waste.
Yeah. You got to make money off it somehow.
They see it as an opportunity to exploit the situation for their own gain, whether that be political or monetary.
Right. They say the same thing in war. It's like, if you can't make money during wartime, you can't make money anytime. Because like the desperation, right? Like, this is a national tragedy for the government of India. I mean, I'm not a professional. I'm not a analyst in this kind of field. It feels like a little column A, a little column B. The government's liable because they didn't have proper regulatory body. Otherwise, all of this would have been seen on the governmental level. And then whether they choose to punish the company or not, it's up to them. Definitely on the company level. And then the sabotage thing, it does feel like an afterthought, but even so, there should be methods in place with such a volatile chemical to, in the event of water in the tank, this is what happens,
Yeah, because they couldn't even get it out. like the pumps were, not the pumps, but like the nitrogen system was so broken they could not remove the water from the tank.
Well, Jim, what do we learn?
Fix your shit.
Yeah, I have to say, of all the episodes of Everything's a Spring, this is probably the longest. I know we said that last episode, but
we're getting better.
Exactly. On paper, this
Level
one
up.
made Derek the angriest. This one made... I thought it was going to be the one we were talking about, the flood of... my brain is broken after 2 hours.
Molasses flood?
Not the molasses flood, the one where...
the beer flood.
No, not the beer flood. It was the tanks. The two holding tanks that flooded and then caused huge ecological... The Kingston fossil...
Oh, yeah, the coal stuff.
Yes, the coal slurry. It feels like that. That one made me the angriest at first. This one has overtaken it as stressed Derek out.
Yeah. And I think like another one of the takeaways from this, right? And this happened in the 80s.
Right.
But like this trend of basically what we have done in this country, right? And this is like a side effect of regulation, right? So we've regulated the production of methyl isocyanate in the United States. Like there are very strict safety regulations in the United States for the production of these chemicals. So what companies do is they go overseas to produce it, where there aren't these regulations. And I think it's really on the government and us as consumers to basically say, hey, like, no, like if you're selling this product in the United States, wherever you're producing it, it must meet the standards set by the United States if you're going to bring that into this country and sell it here.
It's a radical thought, Jim. It's really not.
It's a radical thought.
It's really not. But if you say that in Congress, they look at you like you're crazy. It's like, what do you mean we can't outsource?
Well, I don't even not even saying they can't outsource.
But it's like
you can definitely outsource, but like that factory in India has to be held to the same standards as a factory in West Virginia.
And they absolutely won't. Like there is no
they will
monetary incentive because these people that make these laws, yes, they are forced to care when a tragedy happens. But beyond that, it doesn't make them money. It doesn't make them money, so it's not a priority.
And the thing is, the corporations, this is what makes me like the super maddest about corporations, right? Is the corporation, and this is what pisses me off when people are like, oh, corporations aren't that bad. It's like, no, the people you know in that corporation are people. They are people, and they have a certain level of human decency. But that corporation does not give a rat's ass about you. All the corporation cares about is the return to its shareholders.
Yep.
Because there's a level of, and I think this is actually like the most evil, fundamentally evil thing about corporations is that it abstracts the people making decisions from the actual human experiences of the people executing those decisions.
I couldn't agree more. I could not agree more.
Because basically, like the top dog at Dow Chemical or Union Carbide can basically say, hey, we need to cut our costs by X amount to meet our goals for this next year. How do we do that? And then he just gives that to his people, and then those people run with it. And like, okay, well, now if I don't cut the costs to this level, I'm going to lose my job, and my family's not going to eat.
It's top-down pressure.
Top-down pressure causes all of these corner-cutting issues, and it's like, did what's his name, Warren Anderson? Did he ever visit that facility until he found? Like, I don't know. Like,
even if he had, would it change anything?
I'd almost guarantee you he didn't. Like,
and even if he did, he's not the technical expert to know that something's wrong at face. Like, just looking at it. Here's the thing. If you wanted this not to happen, like you said, you would have sent your inspectors that found out because they did a mirror image study of this very similar plant, found out the plant in the United States is wrong. Have your regulatory and investigation body go overseas and start making the mitigation process. But you can't stop the production. That doesn't make money, Jim.
Exactly. And that's what is so frustrating about it is these large corporations, and they've gotten away with it for centuries, right? It's like they have, like, they can say, oh, well, it's not profitable to do it this way, and they can basically get their way.
Yep.
Rather than saying like, oh, well, okay, we need to set this up correctly from the beginning and maintain it.
And the sad part about it, Jim, is our lives in these companies' eyes, and I'll end with this for me personally, right? In these large corporations' eyes, we are just a decimal point being moved over to the left in a budget. Like, we are just the legal fees it takes to overcome this. It doesn't matter if it takes 15 years of litigation. It's a massive multi-billion-dollar corporation. They can have this like lawsuit my entire life. I'll be dead and gone, and they can just pay for it. It's money. It's a dollar amount that your life is worth.
Yeah, it's so frustrating. Because basically what you're saying is like, okay, well, does it cost more to basically like pay off the families of the people who died, or or does it cost more to do it correctly so that nobody gets hurt?
Right. The settlement.
And the answer a lot of times is you ship it overseas. And you pay, these people are in 1980. Like, how much was an Indian man making a year? A few $100?
Not much. Like, if working conditions in India aren't great now, so I can't imagine 40 years ago. Indian
median income. Basically, the middle class, lower class, these are probably the factory workers are going to be lower middle class. So basically, these people are making about 40,000 INR per year. Now, what's INR to American dollars? And this is in today's money. So let's just say 40,000 INR.
Is the INR
That's
rupee?
$480.
$480 a year?
A year in today's money, right? That's not even accounting for inflation.
That's not much.
So it's like, okay, well... Yeah, like literally, like, okay, well, we can pay this widow her husband's salary for feasibly his life,
And it's a drop in the bucket to the company.
$10,000.
Yeah, that neighborhood is a drop in the bucket to them because they put a static value on human life and took out the human aspect when they analyze it. We have to stop because I'm going to cry. This is...
All right, I'm sorry.
No,
Okay.
it's just... It is upsetting. And if you don't leave this episode at least a little frustrated, and hopefully what we've taught you as a viewer is to look at these things objectively, because you can look on the news now and you can see all of these class action settlements for things like the Flint water crisis, the Kingston coal spill that we talked about in a few episodes ago. These things happen often, frequently and often.
Absolutely. Oh, boy.
Ooh, that's not a fun one to start the year off, but it's all uphill from here, he said.
It's all uphill from here, we say. So, I don't know. I thought this was just a really compelling event. Obviously not a joyful event.
No, but it's important.
A very compelling one.
It's important.
And important to talk about. And I think it's, especially in today's day and age when we're outsourcing so much of our toxic production to India, China, Mexico, Puerto Rico. I mean, what we're doing is we're not actually being greener or more ecologically friendly. We're just outsourcing our pollution to somebody else.
We're just not measuring it.
Exactly. And to me, like, that is such a huge problem with our current industrial system. And it really needs to be addressed. And I guess hopefully we can draw some small amount of attention to that issue.
Right on. Well, on that note, thank you for listening to this episode of Everything's a Spring. It's going to be a long one. I'm going to edit it for a while, so it'll probably be out Monday instead of Sunday. Jim, you got anything to plug?
Well, we've got the Whiskey Grail. Our Christmas rush is over, so I think we actually have stock on the website again, which is excellent. So if you're looking for a non-toxic, all-natural drinking vessel to enjoy your favorite bourbon, scotch, or rye whiskey out of, check us out at whiskeygrail.com. It'll soothe your whiskey and make the drinking experience that much better.
And if you listen to this episode, it'll be great to have some whiskey go down smooth after hearing this jarring shift of events. And also, folks, I really want to press this right at our first episode. If you're even still here listening, follow us on Twitter at AllOurSpring. If you want to give us comments, but you listen on something like CastBox where they don't have a comment system, hop on our YouTube, send us a DM. We have Instagram, we have Twitter, we have all other things I don't remember we have. Message us. Use Spotify to tell us what you want to listen to, what you liked, what you didn't like. We can only get better from your feedback, and we really, really appreciate the amount we've gotten so far in our first couple months of Everything's a Spring. And on that note,
let's bounce.
Let's bounce.